Okay, we're going to add some fullness at the head of the sleeve now. So let's put our line down. That's going to be our centre line. We can line that up so you know where the centre line is going to be exactly. And we're going to trace off the sleeve, making sure we've got all the notches in place. And I'm ignoring the dart again. Okay, lovely. That leaves us free to draw in the underarm, line up at the elbow. That one. Okay. I'm going to be adding head at the sleeve. So what I'm looking for this sleeve is I'm going to make it short, and I'm going to make it puffy at the top, like big puffy, like Princess Di wedding dress puffy. Yeah, that's what I'm aiming at. So first thing we need to do is decide on what length this sleeve is going to be, because we need to do our manipulations on it at the length that we wish it to end up. So I'm going to make it fairly short, I think. I'm going to go about halfway between the underarm and the elbow. Draw my line on, and I'm kind of ready to go. I'm going to cut some of this paper off because it's just going to be more difficult. I'm going to take a new piece of paper and I'm going to mark a centre line on this. Because as we slash and spread, we want it to be able to put it back in a way that we know where the centre line is, because if you remember from your first session on sleeves, the centre line is also the grain line. This time I'm going to be slashing from the top, excuse me, I'm going to be slashing from the head down to the hem edge of the sleeve. So let's get that done. I'm going to give myself lines to cut down every 3 centimetres. So that's 2 centimetres. And again, I'm only going out as far as the head of the sleeve goes out. I've done 1.5 there. I'm not interrupting where these notches are, and I want the fullness to be at the head, not on the underarm. It'd be a bit weird to have fullness on the underarm. So make sure that you only slash where you want the fullness to be. I'm going to do the same number of slashes to the back as I did to the front, because I don't particularly want it to be more slashed at the front than at the back, or more full at the front than at the back. Okay, so I've got my lines in, and I know this was my centre line. I'll just make sure I mark it in case I forget at some point. I'm going to cut some of this excess off, but not all of it. Okay, so I'm going to start by slashing in where the fullness is going to go. So when we did the fullness at the hem, we slashed from the wrist upwards because the fullness was at the wrist. Here the fullness is at the head, so we're going to start by slashing down from the head to the hemline, not beyond the hemline. So we want to get really nice and up close there. noticed I went a bit zigzaggy as I came down the line. It kind of doesn't matter. What matters is the point at which you start and the point at which you end. I don't know why you'd want to do it, but you can do all sorts of fancy cutting in between those two. Okay, so I can twizzle that round, kind of get ready, thinking about my centre line, and now I need to slip up to be able to manipulate those. Oops, cut one off. So you're slipping up to, but not beyond that hemline. There we go. So I'm going to start with the centre again, and at the centre I want to make sure, much like I did when we were putting fullness in at the hem, that if I make a decision on where the centre line is going to be, because remember this is going to be our grain, I'm going to go equally to either side. Now I need to move that one in slightly, or the other one out slightly. So I'm prematurely stuck there. There you go, back in. Right then, I wanted 2.5 on either side by the looks of it. I've got 2.5 on that side. I'm going to just mark where 2.5 is on that side. Save me having to twiddle too much. There we go. Now it's in the right place. Lovely. And now I need to start spreading these. Now, it's not necessary that you always do exactly the same measurements between, but I'm gonna, on all of these, put 4 in. I want quite a lot of fullness. I want that 1980s madness going on. I also want these to be laying straight when they hit the hem. Going to fix those in position and do the front edge before we start to talk about the odd things that will have happened. Okay, here we go again. Now sometimes with this style you also may wish to close up the hem edge to make it a little bit tighter where it hits the arm. So you can do that by, I'm going to do it by tapering off the underarm seam. Okay, you can see now I'm getting a bit slapdash. I'm not bothering to measure them all. This one that broke off, I need to stick back so it just follows a nice curve through. Well, you can see already that in spreading out the top, we've now got a very curved hem edge. So what you would need to do for that edge is you'd need to make a facing for it, because you couldn't have a straight turned up hem. So the way you would make your facing for it, we would follow exactly the same principles as when you made the facing for the armhole or the neck edge. So just think of a facing as a false hem. Okay, so as well as giving us that really curved hem edge, you will notice, I hope, that this has really sort of spliced up that top edge peculiarly. But it's to our advantage with any sort of fullness. So we have a sleeve that's going to be puffy, coming up and coming down, whereas normally a sleeve would just sit like so. So what you have to do is kind of work out how much it's going up by and how much it's coming down by, and that's what you need to add on this top edge, which is one of the reasons why it's very handy to have your centre line in and running beyond where the sleeve currently is. So I'm going to say I'm going to add 10 centimetres onto that top edge. So I've got 10 centimetres at the centre line. I'm going to use a pencil to do this first because it might not come out right first time. And I'm now going to run a nice smooth line from the natural armhole, if you like, call it that, of the sleeve round to that new point. That doesn't look bad to me. We'll be maintaining these notches at the back, we'll be maintaining those notches at the front, and we will be maintaining a notch at the top of the centre line at the apex of the sleeve. So I'm going to do the same here. And that looks kind of fine to me. So you just have to get confident with knowing that you're adding and you want fullness. The more you practice this, the better. You'll now trace this off. I'm assuming I don't have to show you how to trace things off at this juncture. I'm going to get rid of the top of that because that's kind of in my way a little bit. So we know these notches, we know these notches, we know that notch. But when we annotate, so you'll be adding on your seam allowance in exactly the same way as normal, but we know that this line here has to be gathered, and this line here has to be gathered. So when you annotate, you are going to draw a wiggly line and you're going to say gather to. You can either take a measurement of what the sleeve used to be, or you can just say gather to fit. Gather to fit. Always with a sleeve, you're going to cut one pair. You know, it also needs the size, it also needs the style. It will need a seam allowance of 1 centimetre all the way around. It will need a facing for the lower hem. But I'm not going to show you that because you've learnt that before. But that is the shape that your pattern will be to create a sleeve that's this shape. Oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't taper it. I'm going to taper it by 1 centimetre at the hem. And what I'm going to need to do, because I've done that, is I'm going to need to make sure, for the sake of a nice run through, that I've got that squared off at least for a very short amount to give us a nice run through. So that one dropped down by about 4 millimetres to create that 90 degrees, and I'm going to do the same here. Lovely. So that's now a narrower hem edge than we had previously, but it's going to make a nice run through when it's sewn. Right then, I'm leaving you there with that thought. Don't forget to check out the wall chart instructions.